Go ahead.
Good morning and welcome to the February 19, 2025 meeting of the Shane County IDA Board of Directors. We'll go ahead and roll call ourselves in.
Raymond here.
Corey here.
Ryan here.
Both here.
Woodford here.
Burton here. Reading of the IDA mission statement. It is the mission of the Shenango County Industrial Development Agency to advance the health, prosperity, and welfare of the county citizens by helping to retain, create, and attract business through appropriate investments and incentives. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from the January 15th meeting. Need a motion to approve those?
Second.
Perfect. Any discussions, omissions, or corrections? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Raymond, aye.
Zeno abstains.
Corey, aye.
Ryan abstains.
Both aye. Woodford aye.
Burton, aye. Great. Quickly, Kathy Joe's not here today to go over financials. You'll notice we had a lot of checks we paid out in the last month. Most of those are in regards to this building and annual contracts, things like insurance, fire service, some electrical work. We have to pay for plowing now and things of that nature. So that's pretty much what that contains, along with the payment of the taxes and of course our contract with Commerce Shenango. Looking down through the statement of financial position on page 7 in your packet, not much has changed there. Between the end of the year and the end of the month, the end of January, $4,000 differential in assets is all. Property and equipment is remaining relatively flat as well. Liabilities, a little bit of an increase to the tune of about $9,000. Kathy Joe does have some notes down here on the numbered items. So as you can see, our total liabilities and fund balance is difference of about $4,000 between the end of the year and the end of last month. Aged receivables, we did ask this. I know Kathy Joe's not here, and I know you told me to ask any questions ahead of time. I know last meeting we asked about the hybrid.
Tyler, we have an update on hybrid.
We do, and I guess not much of a different update than the last month, to be honest with you. As we all know, construction hasn't started on that project, and due to that, the property has not been placed on the tax exempt rolls yet. It's our understanding, obviously, that the hybrid will seek an amendment to their pilot schedule, is what our attorneys have said, to coincide with the project completion. So they said that they will likely need to request the IDA to grant an extension of the sales tax exemption previously granted. Thus, given that certain IDA approvals will likely be needed, there may be solid ground to press them on payment of IDA fees as we contemplate a possible amendment to the pilot payment schedule. So our attorneys are basically stating that we may have obviously an opportunity to collect those fees if they come back with us to grant an extension. But again, not really much of a.
We can have a conversation, Brian. I'd like to have a conversation at some point regarding our attorneys and the aggressive or lack of aggressive nature with which they advise us, right? So, but that's not appropriate. Basically, they kick the can down the road, hybrids kick the can down the road, and our attorneys have said, let's see what they come back with. So if we continue to wait, they owe us $94,000. Our options, I believe, are to rescind the pilot, which we can do, or to continue to wait for them to come back with an answer. And our attorneys are it's a business decision.
Let's have a little bit of a conversation about that, because one of the things when we're audited by the comptroller's office is follow up on existing projects that they feel we don't do everything we should and could. Also, when there's non-adherence, to me, this is 100% non-adherence at this point. Does anybody feel differently about that? My recommendation to the attorneys would be to start the process to let Highbridge know that we're serious and that this is, first of all, there was a lot of negative feedback from that community. And we approved this pilot in good faith because we as a board felt it truly was what was better for the whole. They have done nothing except tie up people's land. And now they're not even paying us. So my recommendation would be to tell our attorneys to start the process of revoking their pilot program. I have no interest in doing an amendment with them at this time. What if they changed ownership like 2 or 3 times already? So I don't know. Feedback, please.
What progress have they made? Any?
None. None.
How long has this project been going on now? Been 5
3
years?
days,
Maybe?
Been
Since its conception?
And
Different owners? It's,
And
it hasn't been a smooth
it was prior to COVID.
trajectory.
Because that was the excuse we've been given, is that prices increased so significantly that they've had to put a pause on the project, then they sold the project to somebody else. Still no movement, right? I mean, the prices aren't going down anytime soon.
I guess my suggestion was we hold it in abeyance, at least till next month. And devise a plan and move forward with that.
We'll, how about that, RC? We'll take that makes sense to me. We'll get back with our attorneys and tell them we'd like to take a more aggressive stance with making sure these guys adhere to that. What would that be? What would the next step be from a legal standpoint to do that? So I'll ask. the question.
Yeah, that's,
And I think Brian brings up a valid course of action. I think we just need to clarify that.
I got you. If they're saying we could negotiate a fee or saying we could cancel the pilot, we're gonna tell our lawyers we'd like to take the next most aggressive step to make sure we can enforce what we have as a contract. It's a contract. Okay, we're good. We understand. Thank you.
thank you. Thanks, Tyler. Nord Solar's $1,100 behind 90 days, and the other ones are net 30, I'm assuming because they've just been
We'll follow
billed
up.
that one, so. Again, receivables, this is only a partial listing, we got a new updated listing that we looked at earlier. Statement of activities, there's nothing crazy there, other than, you know, a big increase in utilities here, because we had to pay out all those bills, so, one time.
Yeah, and just so you know, Brian, we haven't done a lot of exploration because we need to get out of the old into the new pretty quickly. John did a really nice job of making things go as smooth as possible. We haven't tried to make any real investments here. So there's things, we don't have enough keys for everybody yet. But we can't get those keys, we've got to change the doors. So we don't want to do those things until there's the outcome of that Restore New York grant that we applied for downstairs. So for right now, I think that'll be the last of the expenses that you're unexpected ones until that grant gets approved.
Need a motion to accept the financial report, January 31, 2025.
So moved.
Need a second?
Corey, second.
Any discussion?
Brian, would it be possible, and I don't know if I was looking for it, can we track budgeted versus actual on many of these expenses that are being incurred from this facility? Like on a separate, just to track it on a
I
separate?
don't see any reason that for the startup first year or
Correct.
whatever, kind of like we did with the railroad project.
Yeah,
where
just to
it's
take
its
our
own
calls and
separate
know where
sheet.
we are.
Yeah, can you ask Kathy Joe if we could do that in the interim?
Okay, we will.
I'm sure she.
Yes.
Thanks, Mike.
Good recommendation. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Raymond, aye.
You know, I.
Corey, aye.
Ryan, I.
Woodford, aye.
Bird time. Bills and invoice, need a motion to approve the bills and invoices.
So moved.
Need a second? Nope, it was a tie. We'll give it to Zena. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Raymond, aye.
Corey, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Woodford, aye.
Burton, aye. Great. Next, we have a couple of guests with us here on the TV screen from the Open Space Institute. We got Danae and Bob. Danae, I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. Deanie. Okay, sorry, Deanie. Hyphensley?
Hoffine. Hoffine is my middle name and Lee is my last name.
Okay,
Complicated.
yes. And Bob Anderberg.
Thank you,
Sal.
Yeah, and Bob, we have a variety of people here. Real quickly, we appreciate getting us through. The next two conversations are with you and another gentleman here from Herkimer County, the head of their IDA, John Cusick. But we'll do some introductions because the rest of our agenda can be flexed. The executive update, the pilots, the old business. There's no urgencies, I don't believe, right now. Correct, Tyler? We're not taking any votes on the resolution for the.
We are, but you need to make a
We
vote
do
though.
take one vote.
Yeah.
So, but I'd like to take the time to go around the table because we have people here from the city, the county, as well as the IDA. So if that'd be good for you, we'll start with Brian Burton, our chairman, and in his role, and we'll come around and end with me, if that's okay.
That would be terrific, Sal. That would be terrific.
I'm Brian Burton, Chairman, Shenango County IDA.
Pete Raymond, IDA board member.
Taylor Zeno, IDA board member.
Mike Corey, IDA board member, town supervisor, Smyrna.
Morning, Tyler Oliver, Commerce Shenango.
John Pizik, Herkimer County IDA.
Jeff Blanchard, chairman of the county board of supervisors.
Barb Knowles, Commerce Shenango.
Eric Schooner, Community Development Director in the city of Norwich. Shane Butler, Planning Director and Airport Administrator for Shenango County.
John Holden, Commerce Shenango.
Martha Ryan, IDA member.
Stan Falls, IDA board member and council supervisor of the town of Norwich.
And R.C. Woodford, IDA board member.
Thank you. And they know who you are, Bob and Denise, but if you could tell us a little bit about your role, what your institute is, and why we're here, we're gonna let you run with the rest of this conversation, just like you did with Tyler and I.
Sure, that sounds great. And Sal, you asked that we keep our presentation to less than 3 hours.
Well, I hope so, because you had me convinced in far less time that you'd be the right people to bring to this board. So I'm sure you could close it quicker than that. But you take all the time you need.
Hopefully, but it is really a pleasure being here. We wish we were there in person. I hope next time we are. And I spent 4 very happy years living in the Shenango Valley when I was younger, so I have very fond feelings of it. But anyway, we have 3 slides, which maybe we can throw up on the screen while Deanie and I talk. Deanie, do you have access to those?
I'm gonna share it and then actually, wait, can I do this?
How do I make it larger?
Yeah, we can see it. We can see it perfectly.
Okay. Well, very,
Can you see it now?
No.
Well,
Yeah.
we have,
Now you can.
what we'll do is very quickly tell you a little bit about Open Space Institute, tell you about our proposal for the Utica branch of the New York Susquehanna and Western Railroad, and how we propose to proceed and how we propose to work with the IDA. But very briefly, OSI is a regional conservation organization. We are based in New York, 50 years old. We've protected a little bit over 2.5 million acres of land on the East Coast, including 160,000 acres of land in New York State. We also have an active Greenway Trails program where we acquire unused and abandoned rail lines in New York State, largely in the Adirondacks and Hudson River Valley, also in New Jersey and Ohio. And projects we've completed to date include the Essex Hudson Greenway, pictured here, which is a $65 million project in northern New Jersey near Newark. We've completed the Tahawas Rail Trail over in Essex County in the Adirondacks, and several rail trails in the Hudson River Valley, the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail, the Scudamock Rail Trail, the Sullivan L&W Rail Trail, and others. And we are actively pursuing several very large rail trail projects in Columbus, Ohio, Solon, Ohio, and in Pennsylvania. Anyway, in the Chenango Valley, we propose, yes. We propose to acquire the approximately 58.62 mile long unused rail bed, pictured here, owned by the New York, Susquehanna, and Western Railroad, which we call the Susie Q. But this rail bed is located in 4 counties: Broome, Chenango, Madison, and Oneida. And along with its acquisition, we propose to convert it into a multi-use greenway. And pictured here, the greenway would start down in Chenango Forks in Broome County. It would start just south of the Chenango County line. There's a very attractive fishing access and a trestle, which would be the start point of the railroad. Then it would run through Chenango, Madison, and Oneida counties all the way up to Loomis Road near Stockwell. And it would run through the communities of Greene, Oxford, Norwich, Sherburne, and Earlville, all the way up to Stockwell. As you are well aware, approximately 45.52 miles of this rail bed is located in Chenango County and was transferred to your IDA under an operating lease in 1982. The proposed rail trail will, we believe, connect the communities of the valley in a transformative way, which will stimulate future economic growth and community development, while also honoring the history of the people, the rivers, the canals, and the railroads that shape these communities. We see this proposed rail trail, as others we have worked on, as a powerful engine of economic growth and renewal.
Can you pause
Yeah.
for just a second?
Absolutely, Sal.
Dean, can you make that map bigger?
Yeah, so, thanks for stopping. What I'm gonna do is stop the share, because I'm gonna pick it up from another,
That's all right.
I'm gonna do it a different way, because I think it's gonna be easier for you to see it from a different way. So I thought that might be an issue, so hang on a second.
That's okay, thank you. And the reason
Yeah,
why,
yeah, so here we go.
the reason
So
why I
I'm
want,
gonna share it this way. The issue with this, of course, is because it's a
Sure.
up and down map, it's
It's okay.
not,
and
yeah.
I want to pause just because I wanted to, can you go back down to your index that you had that talked about the other trails that were there? So as you think about this work, and as we get ready to talk to John about the rules of IDA and how we work together with our local development corporation to create economic recovery here, think about a visitor economy. Mike, you hear me, and Stan, you hear me talk about those things. The Planning and Economic Development Committee, we're the local tourism plan, we're the designated tourism agency, right, for this county, trying to connect regionally to those Finger Lakes trails, trying to connect regionally to the other areas beyond Shenango County, I believe are critical for us to really leverage a visitor economy, right? So I think what they're talking about is important to us beyond just Shenango County. I'm sorry, I wanted to be able to see that map larger so we could see where it connected to other areas. You guys know where that fishing trestle is, right? It's where the railroad splits right there.
All right, so can you see this better?
Yeah, we can. Thank you. All right, thank you. I just wanted to pause for a second because this group hasn't discussed the visitor economy much.
And as we go through this, if you have any questions, please feel free to
Those
just
are the
stop
trails
me.
that she connects to along this route. And then if you
Yeah, so this is the Finger Lakes. I can't, my vision is terrible too, but I think this is the Finger Lakes Trail that comes up here.
It is. That might be
Yeah.
again.
And, Deanie and I have not walked every inch of this line, but we've walked a lot of it, starting at Chenango Forks, going all the way up to Stockwell. And, we've worked on a number of very prominent rail trails on the East Coast, and this is an absolute winner. I mean, the valley is astoundingly beautiful. The railroad's in good shape, and we think that this could be transformed into a really first-class regional and statewide asset.
So can you talk,
it's-
can you talk us
Yeah.
through now the next step, Bob? How would that occur?
Well, it's a several-step process. We propose to work with the Suzy Q, the New York Susquehanna Western, with your agency, with the advocates, including the Chenango Greenway Conservancy, and the state of New York and other relevant entities to facilitate this whole process. And basically, what we're doing is we are going to negotiate to purchase the railroad from the New York Susquehanna and Western. We are currently appraising the real estate value of the railroad because this purchase would have to compensate the owner for the asset. And we hope to enter by summer into a purchase and sale agreement with the Suzy Q, which will allow us to purchase the rail line at an agreed price. And the purchase and sale agreement will have a sufficient length so that we can undertake several steps. The first is we will request from the Federal Surface Transportation Board a notice of interim trail use, which formally starts what is known as the rail banking process. Now, since the railroad is supporting this project, we think we'll be granted the notice of interim trail use fairly quickly. But the rail banking of this line is extremely important because it helps solve numerous title issues which arise with a 160-year-old railroad, and helps in the transformation of this line from an unused rail bed into a modern rail trail. We will, as part of the process, working with you, ask you to formally consent to the abandonment and rail banking of the unused line. We will undertake, and we're already undertaking, necessary due diligence in connection with acquiring the unused line. That includes the appraisal, which is currently underway, and Deanie and I will both be visiting the Chenango Valley in March with the appraisers to do a high car run of the entire line. We will do a modern survey of the entire line. We have to do an environmental investigation in order to ensure that there are no unacceptable environmental liabilities. We also undertake an independent inspection of the physical condition of the line, including the 57 bridges and the numerous culverts and crossings. From what we've seen, and due to your good work, quite frankly, this line is in very, very good shape, better than most we've looked at. The other big to-do during the period of the PSA is we will work with all of you in the Chenango Valley to identify an appropriate long-term owner of the line. This could be, and you know, we don't know the answers to these questions, but we want to work with you to find the answers. But we have to identify the long-term owner of the line. This could be the New York State Office of Parks. It could possibly be the 4 counties. It could be a newly created entity to take ownership. We would also assist in creating the vision for the transformation of this unused rail line into a regional greenway and economic engine. And issues that we will help everybody address is the design and build out of the recreational trail.
Bob, can I pause you again, Bob, just for a second? I'm sorry, I don't have the clicker to raise my hand, so I apologize for that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but a couple of things that I wanted to touch on regarding the rail banking process. And you talked about why that was important to protect the corridor, so you don't have to worry about 160. But the other thing is,
rail banking.
say that again?
Break things off a little bit, Sal. It's hard for us to hear you.
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, we're worried about.
Sal, you broke up.
Yep, I got you now. Thank you. I apologize. It's Wi-Fi here. We're not hardwired yet, but so can you hear me currently?
Yes, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I can. I sure can. In addition to protecting the corridor and not having land disputes, the reason that this process of abandonment, which sounds horrible, is supported by the railroad, supported by the federal government, supported by the county, hopefully, is because it also says if the railroad was ever needed again to ship Micron from Syracuse down to Binghamton, it's protected. We could invigorate or reutilize that trail for a railroad, right? I mean, that's what it does. It protects it for that use. Am I saying that correctly? Poorly, but correctly?
That is absolutely correct, Sal. And if this was a straightforward abandonment, what often happens is the right-of-way, which was assembled 160 years ago at great cost and expense, could be sold off in pieces. And once a rail line like this is sold off in pieces, it's virtually impossible to reunite it.
So I want
So the
to pause just for a second again, Bob, for this group, because the objection we've heard from state elected officials, once the track comes up, it never goes down. That's not true. It can, and it has. It's not. I'm not saying that it's likely that it will ever do, but we can't let what might happen prohibit us from doing what we need to do now, right? Because you can be protected against that. If Raymond all of a sudden says, we need that track, if Golden Artist Color says we need that track, well, you can have that track if there's the right number of cars going up and down. So I just want to make sure we touched on that, because that will be one of the objections that we hear when this project goes forward.
Well, the very purpose of rail banking is to preserve the rail corridor for potential future use, while alleviating the necessity of the railroad having to keep it in operating condition year after year after year. So this is why railroads love rail banking. There is a guarantee that this rail line will be held intact. And in the future, if the world changes and railroads become big again, there's a process for reactivating this line as a railroad. Now, whoever builds the improvements to turn it into a greenway will get reimbursed for the actual documented cost of doing that. But the railroad can reacquire this line and reopen it as a railroad.
And then
And
then you touched on the other point, which was the management of the line. And clearly, Shenango County doesn't have to be concerned with managing it from Broome to Oneida, right? That's an entity that's going to take that on. I'm assuming that somebody's talked to the other counties and they're supportive of this, Madison, Oneida, Broome.
Well, you are the only county we have spoken to so far.
Okay.
We are told that the other counties are on board, but we have not met with them yet.
That's
But
okay.
That will have to happen as we work on this project.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I just wanted to ask those questions as we continue to go through. Please continue. I apologize for interrupting.
So anyway, we'll work on the vision for turning this into a recreational trail. We'll look at access and trailheads. We'll also look at local business opportunities that arise along the line. I mean, these lines really do spur local economic development, and they've become heavily used. We keep counters on some of our trails elsewhere in New York, and we're gobsmacked by how popular they are. And it seems like, the minute you build one of these trails, people simply flock to it. But our rail trail network down in Ulster County, which is still being built, last year had over 1.4 million visitors, which means that's more visitors than many national parks get. And we get reports from the business community in many of the towns in Ulster County that has really spurred economic development. There's also, as you may know, an unused but in very good shape rail station located in Earlville. And we'll be thinking about potential adaptive use for that rail station. Anyway, once we go through this whole process, and it does take time, OSI or its assignee, could be the state of New York or a new entity, will acquire the rail bed from the New York Susquehanna Western, agree the agreed purchase price in cash. At that time, your operating lease between the New York Susquehanna Western and the IDA would be terminated, and we would be off and running. And as this map alludes, we're starting with this 59-mile segment, starting south at Shenango Forks and running up close to Waterville. But we envision someday that some form of recreational trail might extend all the way down south to Binghamton and connect somehow, not sure how, but connect somehow up to the Utica Rome area and the very popular Erie Canal Trail. So Sal, in a nutshell, that's what we propose to do. We're delighted to work with your group. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. I don't think Zoom really helps too much, but Deanie, I've been knocking away and stepping on your toes. What do you have to add?
I think that all sounds fine. I mean, I think just to sort of set the table for the next steps, I think Bob and I have some work to do now to really evaluate kind of what the asset is that we're dealing with. And you know, I think in these first few months, we're really going to be with the railroad, kind of figuring out what, you know, how are we going to make all this work? How are we going to get site control for a period of time over which we can then begin to unpack a lot of these more complicated issues, the rail banking, you know, the long-term management, whatever. So I'd say the next, you know, three to 6 months, you know, Bob and I are going to be working, you know, directly with the railroad to get that, and then we'll be coming back. You know, Sal, to your point about talking to the other counties, you know, it really helps to have those conversations with government entities and partners to go to them and say, look, we have site control for a period of time. You know, this is the structure we're operating under. And then you really have something to talk to them about, as opposed to sort of like, this is a big idea, you know, it just focuses everybody. So I think that's really the next, so just to set expectations, you know, that can take time, you know, for Bob and I to unpack what it's going to look like with the railroad, what do they agree to, you know, what are their expectations, that kind of stuff. And so that I'll just say that.
And we're comfortable with that, and we'll wait until we have a more definitive plan. But I just want to make sure, and you wanted to make sure that the IDA board, because we have that agreement with the railroad, had any questions or any objections to this plan. We've probably been discussing without figuring out how to get a path forward. We now have a potential partner that obviously knows how to do this. Is there any questions that this board might have while we wait 3 or 4 months for them to get us back together again? Does this make sense, exploring it this route? They don't know how else to do it. The railroads worked with them before, that great relationship with this, they can think beyond just our borders, so it seems to make sense.
Well, and when the Greenway came to us, that's what it was.
Right.
Right, because they had the grand plan going from Utica to Shenango Forks.
They got 79 miles.
Right, so how,
But
you know,
these
the
guys-
first
they know
thing we
the
asked them is, how are you gonna get the other counties on board, who's gonna work with them? So I think this is kind of the step we've asked for from the Greenway, so.
Well, these guys, and this is why they're very familiar with the Shenango Greenway, and I coached a little bit on that they have a positive, they have a polar reaction at times from people, a polar opposite reaction. People are very supportive, but then they also sometimes have people that are not quite as supportive because they can't see the whole vision. So I just want us to make sure we're conscious of that, because they're great advocates. They'll be huge people to help you in this process. We just gotta make sure it's framed the right way, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of experience in working with local advocates. I mean, there's, you know, remember OSI we're really the transaction people, right? So we focus on the transaction and sort of do the nitty gritty and the technical part of an acquisition like this. But there's always advocates, right? And that's always a dance that you have to do as you know, in our role to kind of understand how do you deploy them, you know, how do you use them to your advantage, and then, you know, make sure that they're not off doing something that undermines the project. You know, usually it's by accident, but they do need management advocates.
To that point,
We're not advocates.
Yeah, to that point, what is the best timing to get them engaged with the information?
Well, I guess what I would say is, you know, Bob and I have been managing them so far over the past couple of months. And, you know, they've invited us a bunch of times to come present and come talk, and we've sort of deferred them. You know, we've sort of said, you know, what I sort of just said to you guys, which is like, give us a chance, you know, give us, you know, 3-6 months to really drill down to understand what the railroad wants, you know, how we can work with the railroad to cure this, get site control, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk to you about, what is our messaging, what is our strategy going forward to ensure that we include all the people being,
And I would
that we,
suppose,
and that we sort of man herd the cat. Yeah,
and at that point, Dee, you'll also articulate the roles for advocates, the IDA, government officials, the various municipalities. At that same time, right, you'll describe what.
yeah, I mean, I think, look, it'll be a work in progress. Yes, I think that's right. I think that will become a little bit clearer once I think we have the, the price and the terms really of the contract and the PSA that Bob is talking about. I mean, I think, we'll have a little bit more to begin to understand what the roles are. I mean, look, I think we do that, like I said, we do this all the time. So I can sort of, guess that, the Greenway folks will probably be more active in the outreach space than OSI will be, but we can be part of that also if it's necessary, right? The other county, we'll just have to figure it out what the other counties, the other roles, the other counties want to play and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
And I know it's hard sell, good fences make good neighbors. And our role right now, we are focused on a lender on putting together a package which is fair and equitable to the New York, Susquehanna, and Western, fair and equitable to the Chenango County IDA, and that is our role right now.
Perfect. You guys know what you're doing, because like you said, you've done lots of these. We haven't. I'm more concerned with you guys letting us know the roles you need others to fill in the area, like the other agencies, the other people. That's what
Yeah, I mean, I guess, one of the things I'll just say is, we are sort of outsiders, right? I mean, we come into these communities, we're invited into these communities to do these transactions because we bring this sort of suite of skills, right? But that is no replacement for, knowledge on the ground of sort of the local politics and the landmines and that kind of stuff. So I think to some extent, we'll be coming back to you to sort of, for your guidance along the way to say, like, what do we have to watch out for? Can you introduce us? Can we think this through? Those kinds of things. Once it gets, once we get traction. I mean, the other thing I'll just say to everybody, in dealing with a railroad, we have a lot of experience with Class 1 railroads, a little bit with Class 2. But there's something that I always like to say, that there's railroad time, right? Which they take their time. These are not entities that, move fast or are not very deliberative. They're very deliberative about the choices that they make. Now, this has obviously not been used for many years. So, but I'm just saying, I'm just setting expectations around the timing that, we're saying 3 to 6 months. It may play out longer than that. And that's just because railroads are slow, lumbering entities.
We'll stay in touch with you guys and we'll keep the board updated.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Absolutely, and if you have any questions for Dee and I, we're always available to talk with you. I would love to get together in person one of these days soon, but we really do look forward to working with this group.
You guys are good? Good.
Yes, I do have a quick question though, and it's more on the design stage. I know there's other things that go before that, the upfront things, but the thing that sticks in my mind is you've got this restoration clause where you're going to, if there's a transportation need, to transfer this back into a rail and working line. But so what problems would that cause when you're trying to repurpose this trail? I mean, will that stop you or limit you to how far you can repurpose this and redesign it? Because those rails would have to stay down, wouldn't they?
No, they don't stay down.
Okay.
What typically happens is at or after closing, the railroad removes the ties, removes the tracks, and then sometimes they grade the ballast for us. But we will transform this into basically a linear park and recreational trail. If there is a reactivation down the road, what happens is the real estate there for the tracks to be relayed. But although there are several thousand rail lines in the U.S., it's extremely rare for there to be reactivation. The real point of the program is that it's there if it's needed, but Jeannie, are you aware of any reactivations? I'm not.
One,
One,
outside
Okay.
Pittsburgh.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, yeah, and it's expensive to redo it, and, you know, I'll just go back and say, you know, to the point I made about being on railroad time, I think part of the reason why they don't happen very often is the railroads don't really abandon or put in rail banking things that they see as, you know, as being valuable, right, as being usable in the future, right? So they do complicated analysis of where their freight is, what they're doing, what the markets are, and then they don't move to have this conversation that we're having until they're pretty sure that they're really finished with the line. I mean, obviously 50, 100 years from now, you don't really know, but you know, I think it's very rare that they get reactivated.
But we can assure folks, you know, the big difficulty in reactivating an old line is making sure that the right of way is intact. Because if it isn't, it's tortuous eminent domain to piece it together. So this assures people in the future that if the economic climate changes and there is an economic case for reactivation, the real estate's ready to go. The line is there. It can be converted. Now, it would have to be rebuilt with tracks, ties, signals, crossings. But that apparently is not the big burden. The big burden is making sure that the real estate is intact. And that's the whole purpose of the rail banking program, but which of course is a federal program.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and do feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And Deanie and I think we'll be up there sometime in the next month to be further working on this.
Yeah, let us know when you're here for sure. We'd like that.
All right, well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Have a, stay warm. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're gonna pivot now down to a point where, as we discussed, I think it was 3 months ago now, we talked about trying to understand the roles of the IDA. And as our role is I've understood it over the last 2 years in this job, and I've tried to, you know, learn more about how to utilize the assets we have here in the county. We're focused on economic development, in my mind, from job creation. That's what we've been trying to do, and then the pilot programs have been something that we've managed, in my opinion, again, as a necessary entity to deal with these things, as solar farms and things like that. But in my opinion, again, we've not used the IDA as a catalyst, as an outward catalyst to say, let's go pursue this effort to either create those jobs, create housing. And I'm not sure that I understood exactly what our role would be in a variety of topics. So there's a gentleman from Herkimer County, I'm going to introduce himself in just a second, that I've had the pleasure of seeing speak at a couple of different economic development conferences and training sessions. And he also was a former county legislator up in Herkimer County. It's not a county like Dutchess County. He's similar to us. His role at the IDA and the things that they do are why I asked him to come, and I'll let him introduce himself. And this is really meant to be a dialogue so that we understand how we can be more effective as a board, as an entity, to really stimulate our economy. So John, please.
Actually, before we get on to John, Taylor's got a lead.
Okay.
We do have a couple items we need to vote on, and since we got the whole board here, Taylor, do you have 1 minute? Principal Holding Group, they're all principal, right?
So, yeah, yep, and we'll dive into that one right now. So we had a successful public hearing last month. We were hopeful of voting on their final resolution today. Unfortunately, we are not going to do that. Due to the nature of the project, we have to consider and adopt a statement of retail findings that starts on page 12 of your packet. And just a quick rundown or backstory as to what that is. Because the project is a hotel and restaurant and there will be retail sales on the premises, we would have to follow an exception to a general municipal law about giving financial assistance to somebody who makes retail sales. The exception to that rule, obviously, is if you live in a highly distressed area. As we know, Chenango County, Norwich specifically, is considered a highly distressed area. Our attorneys were able to come up with that information based on the U.S. Census Bureau. I found that we poverty rate of 26.9%. So we are covered there. But in order to cover our bases with this project, they want us to adopt this statement of retail findings to make sure we're all on the same page that this is a retail facility before moving forward to the final resolution. Does that make sense?
Need a motion to adopt the statement of findings? Need a second?
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Raymond,
Zeno,
Corey, aye.
Ryan, I.
Bullseye.
With that.
Bert and I.
Perfect. So the next step here is I'll take that. We need to send a certificate over to the county. Chairman Blanchard would have to sign that at that point, and I'll get that over to our attorneys, and then we are hopeful of doing the final resolution in March for that project.
Nothing else to vote on?
There's nothing else to vote on.
Kelly, thank you very much.
Thanks, Kelly. Again, we're gonna table that conversation, but again, our attorney should have let us know that we needed that resolution well in advance of 2 days ago. So I just want to have some conversation.
All right.
Now, John can introduce himself.
John, thank you for your patience.
That was the build-up, then the drop, then the.
So, you go anywhere you want.
I was so fortunate to win an award by Genesis Group one day, and
thank you.
so it was myself, another woman that passed, and then the guest speaker was Steve Wynn. So I'm going ahead of Steve Wynn, and I'm thinking this is great. Steve Wynn gets a little stomach ache and has to go ahead of me. How do I follow Steve Wynn? I mean, it just didn't work out. Thank you. I'm gonna give everybody my card. So nobody's John when I talk way too much.
Thank you.
So yeah, I've met and talked to Sal several times at different events and different things, and just I guess I wanted, after we talked, there's some different things that we do at Herkimer County, very similar in size, about 60,000 people. Though we do use legislators, we have about 17 legislators, so it makes it a little more difficult. They do provide us with about $200,000 a year in financial support. None of that goes to salaries, it goes to more projects type based.
What types of projects?
We helped out, say, the town of Webb do an income study so they could do a grant for sewer extension. We helped out the town of Schuyler do an income study so they can do a water extension. We'll look at different properties to see if they're brownfields or not, but we have received grants for that too. One thing I did want to bring up, and I hope it's okay, you were talking about a project. Is that a solar project or wind? Wind.
Largest windmills on land in the United States.
Well, we all know what the new president's thinking about wind. So the thing that we've been working on 4 solar projects for about 4 years, and they finally are happening now. So it's not unusual for green energy projects to take a long time. However, when we induce a project, we expect half that. So it ended up being, they finally just closed on it. It was about $2 million for the agency. But we received, well, we got a quarter of it, $250 from each one about 3 years ago. Then we got another $250, and then we just finally closed on it. So when we induce is when we request the money. Now, for extensions, if they want ST60s extended, we charge $2,000 plus they pay the attorney's fees. So just so you know, but that's all on our website too. You can steal. We want you to steal everything from us.
That's how we found you.
Yeah, I mean, please, we didn't invent it either. We stole from everybody too. But we do surround ourselves with good attorneys, good consultants, all of those as well. So.
And so what, John, with those funds that you guys, what other types of projects would your IDA actively be engaged with? Rather than, if you guys have been doing this longer than I have with the IDA, right? To me, at our role at the IDA, again, we're not proactively going out there saying, this is a school that we should buy, like the example that you.
Bill's school, we just took that over.
Yes, and you're gonna put housing
Into there.
We've not contemplated those things.
So just to back up too quickly from that, I heard your mission statement. And we were audited too. We had 3 auditors in our facility for 6 months. It was terrible. And the problem was we were being audited by 2 other agencies at the same time, and none of them would talk because they don't get along. So we got it through, but one thing I really learned, well, 2 things I learned. One is, if it's in your mission statement, you can do it. And in your mission statement, you don't talk about housing, you don't talk about green energy, you don't talk about industry. You've got to put that in your mission statement. Look at ours, change it a little bit, do whatever you want, but you really have to put that in there. Then when they come and say, well, why are you working on this part? It's part of our mission statement, approved by our board, submitted to the ABO. You got all that covered. And then the other thing I learned from them, and we fought for probably 3 days, was best practices. What the hell's a best practice? Nothing's in writing. We sat with them for days. Well, this is what we like to see. Okay, but where does it show me that? You know, I'm not going to do it because you don't have it written there. You can find me if you want to. Well, they didn't. They gave us one major. They called it a major. However, when you do an IDA application and you say, it says estimated sales tax. Doesn't say amount, it says estimated. So they wanted us to claw back from a great client that we brought in that increased jobs by 50 to claw back 6,000 in sales tax. I said, I'm not doing that. My board isn't agreeing to that. It's $6,000. They brought in jobs, and here's the word estimate. If you want to go to court, any judge is going to see it says the word estimate here. So they're a body to come take a look to make sure that you're not spending money without going out to bid in certain cases. Though for services, if it's your county policy, you don't have to go. We don't go out to bid for most services. We'll get 3 bids, but we'll make the decision on who we're going to use for it, compared to if you use federal or state money. But if it's our administrative money, we can do with it what we want when it comes to services. So just rewind a little bit more. So I've only been doing this 7 years. I was chairman of our board of the IDA for probably 5 years. And I've come from the private sector. I've been involved in manufacturing for 20 years. I won the first New York State contract for Hewlett-Packard laser printers in the 80s. So I've been selling my whole career. It's been a great career. And this is, our IDA was struggling. The board came to me, said, would I take the job? Went to my wife. I said, it's a huge pay cut, but I think we can do some things. And when I started, we were about 500,000 in the red, and we're about 5 million in the black right now, considering all the properties and different things. But we're actively always looking for properties too. And one of the things the county has truly helped me with is buying property. So the county has loaned us the money at no interest to buy the property, and we pay it back as we sell it, as well as we do PIFs, pilot increment financing, to bring the infrastructure in that part. And then
What kind of real estate have you bought, John?
Farmland, but off of major highways, except for one property. So we acquired the Schuyler Drive-In. I don't know if any of you know the Utica area, Schuyler. We had a drive-in there for decades. Went out of business, didn't pay the taxes. We got it for $1. So I'm gonna say it's probably 25 years ago, we got in there, Schuyler Wood Pellet. A wood pellet company wanted to come. We put them more toward the back of that property, the best usable land we could. Then we got another company in called Wilcor. They sell to campgrounds, tchotchkes, and all that stuff. So then we got 2. So when I was starting, the chairman of our legislatures from Schuyler, a farm was for sale that was right connected to this. So we went to the state. We got a couple $100,000 from the state. The county gave us the rest of the money, and we bought 188 acres about 4 years ago. 21. We closed on it January 21. So we looked at our Schuyler. I'm just going to set this here. If that's okay. So we looked at this Schuyler Business Park we had. It's close to Utica, right on Route 5, close to Route 5S, 8 miles either way to the New York State Thruway. We said, what else can we do with it? So we bought farmland that was organic farmland. So it wasn't producing a lot, but it was still organic field that the farmer wanted to sell. And we ended up buying it for about $4,500 an acre, and we sell it now. We have 60 acres left that are under contract out of all of that, and we sell it for about $11,500 an acre.
And you did that how?
How did I sell it?
Now, how did you turn it? How did you create that value?
By bringing in the infrastructure, working with National Grid, working with the water authority to bring the water lines in, working with the county for the PIF to borrow the money. Then when we pay back the money to the county, it's 50%. So say you owe $1 in taxes, 50% of that's going to the county to pay that down. And then the other 50% is divided amongst the taxing jurisdictions the way it is. So there is a county investment, but the return. So since I've started, I've brought in almost $1 billion of new property tax, about 2,500 new jobs. And we've seen a complete change in our area from that. We're more known for development now, where people used to drive past Herkimer County. We look at it with Micron right now, we just purchased another 76 acres that we're calling a high-tech park because the state came to us and said, you need to call this a high-tech park because you have 3 110 or 115 lines right there and you produce enough power that you'll get some of these offshoots of Micron. If I was here, I'd be dealing with Binghamton and trying to get as many offshoots of the battery business as I could.
That's what we're trying to figure out how to do.
Well,
We
you
don't
go,
know how to pursue. I'm going down there today. One day.
I met with the president or whatever of Best it was. I joined Best. I made my senator, you have a great senator here, Oberacker. We used to have them. We switched, they realign all the time. I'm not sure who your assemblyman is, but I make them do a ton of introductions for us too. There is a commitment from the county, and it started out with our Frankfurt pumpkin patch, we called it. It was about 120 acres, and it was a pumpkin patch. And we got the money through Sherry Bollard's office way back in the day to buy the property. Never had a thing in there. Radio stations used to call around Thanksgiving, Halloween, can we have catapult pumpkins in there? We used to say, no, we don't want it to have a bad luck. And then Heidelberg Bakery wanted to expand. And we put in a PIF in that case, and the county gave us money.
What is it, PIF? Say that again.
It's pilot increment financing. So when you do infrastructure, we work with several good engineering firms. They're going to tell you how to set up this park. Well, we were new when we set up this park, kind of stupid. We put a ring road in it and put all the gas and the lines and the electric and the fiber and the water and the sewer. And we put in that first Heidelberg Bakery in the back corner. And then Tractor Supply came and said, we want this big chunk of it. So we had to tear up all that infrastructure. But what's interesting is we were supposed to pay all that PIF back in 2033, and I paid it back 2 years ago because of that sales tax that you get from these companies. One distribution center, a couple other companies, we put a gas station in there.
And you said the sales tax you get, John.
It's property tax, it's not sales tax.
So, okay, so walk me through how that payment goes back to the county and what the rule, so you.
We put a pilot in place.
Yeah.
So our normal pilot's 10 years, but Tractor Supply was a little different, but I'll take a 10-year pilot. 10-year pilot, they're only paying 50% of the assessed taxes on that property. When a company pays, we're going to make it real simple, $1, 50 cents of that dollar goes back to pay down that PIF, and the other 50% is divided amongst the taxing jurisdictions the way it's normally divided. The thing is, you have to work with the school district, the town, the village, and the county to get everybody to sign off on it. But when you explain to them that property was collecting this amount or close to this amount, it pays off. It really does. It shows them that they're bringing more into the community. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to meet with them a lot. We have 30 municipalities. I probably go to them all at least 5 to 7 times each year, some a lot more when we have projects. Like the town of Webb, we don't have so many. We're Old Forges, though we just did one. I go up there probably every 3 months just to tell the board what we're doing. So we have a lot of interaction that way. But it's got to be we convinced our communities, in our legislature and all of our towns and villages what the end goal was. And before we bought the additional property in the town of Schuyler, we went to the board. Do you want us to develop more property here? They said yes. They created before I could even talk anymore, they created a resolution and said we are a pro-business community and wanted to make sure that we could generate that there. So we attract businesses by pilots is one thing. Brownfields, we got very large, and we never did brownfields before. We hold a conference now with our region. Are you guys going to try to come up to that? Have you seen that yet?
I did see that, your Brownfield Summit, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
We have 6 counties involved. Yeah, it's a very good summit. We bring in developers, all the agencies that work on it, the EPA. When I first started, we received a $200,000 EPA assessment. The last time we received a $500,000. Do you guys have
City
any?
of Norwich got that same.
We're going through, we just got awarded to do our brownfield plan in the city, so
How
we're
much,
just starting that process.
how much did you
We
get?
got 180,000.
Great. Did you hire a consultant yet?
Not yet.
Okay, I'll talk to you later
Sure.
and recommend some good ones for it. The key is with that, you want a consultant that's gonna do all the paperwork. There's no sense in you doing it. They all know how to do it, and you put it in the contract, because you have so many new things that you have to go through, different processes again. But that's what the consultants do to help us
Yeah,
out.
appreciate your input.
And so, John, do you guys acquire property and then get it developed? I understand you do that. Do you also want to acquire buildings that are are these properties tax delinquent, or are they on the market paying taxes?
There's several ways we take properties. We haven't done eminent domain, but we're looking at that right now. That's the least way that we want to do it. However, in some cases, you just don't have a chance. Safety comes into play, buildings are falling down. The county, for liability, might want not to take it, but we've come up with other ways to help them. We worked with the village of Herkimer on this school to take it through Article 19B. 19A is residential, 19B is commercial. We hired an attorney, Hodgkin Russ. They worked with the village attorney, cost us about $10,000. But now we're in the process. We went in front of the judge. He gave us the property. Following the process, in about 90 days, we already found a developer for it. I tend to sell before I even own it, but.
What is the Article 9? I know what it is. But that Article 19A and B allows.
Municipalities to take property, and it gets rid of all the liens on the property. There's no more liens on it. You don't have to pay anybody back. You don't pay the county, you don't pay anybody. Then we put a pilot in place to work with the developer. He brings in market rate or workforce housing. He develops this old school that I went to school in into a brand new place where we're attracting younger people, traveling nurses, whatever we need. And
But why would you ever have the grounds to take a property like that?
well, the municipality does, but we work with them because they don't have the resources.
But they would take it because it was delinquent
Yeah,
taxes.
well, it was abandoned.
It was abandoned.
It's abandoned. We've seen people in there, though there's nobody in there now. We helped them secure it. We toured it. The building still got good bones. The roof is in good shape. A lot of structure there. So we
And
do.
somebody owned it, right?
A gentleman from Georgia who didn't follow the rules, never got back to us. The last conversation, which was about 8 months ago, he told me Obama was going to pay his taxes.
I'm just saying, we have properties like that.
But he was in tax delinquent.
It was, but we didn't take it that way. That way is a much longer process, and then you still have the liability on there. The way that it takes through 19B with the municipality washes that all away. We did environmental phase 1 and phase 2 on it to make sure. We did asbestos survey on it too to see where it was. In most cases, when we buy property, we do all of that. We do the infrastructure studies, the SHPO. We go in and look for artifacts. One time, one of our guys found arrowhead shavings. I said, come on. He goes, yeah, we have to carbon date it. I go, carbon date? We did, but there was nothing there.
No,
The IDA does it?
Yeah, we take it, we make the property ready to sell.
19A, 19B is
Municipal law.
general municipal.
Yeah, general, that they can follow as a municipality, can take over that property, whether it's in the town or the village or city.
GML.
Yeah.
19A,
Not counties can't do that.
Counties can't do it because they can take it over through tax
19B.
foreclosure.
Tax foreclosure.
Whose taxes are they waiving their own? Because after 2 years in the in-rem process, they stop collecting anyways.
So how does that, so we've contemplated that as well. John, I'm asking you a bunch of questions.
No, that's okay, but you need a good attorney. And your local guy, we have a great local guy, Felt Evans, but he handles our small pilots, our smaller programs. We've reached out to a very big firm, Hodgkin Russ, who I met at one of the EDC conferences. And that's who you have to deal with, because in most cases too, they're gonna give you a rate on what it costs, but that's what we use our administrative fees for, and everything else we collect in. You know, we're not supposed to be we're a public benefit corporation.
And so as we think about it though, John, like one of the things we have no way, we don't have a land bank. We don't have.
You don't necessarily need a land bank. We just formed one in Herkimer County. We had the Greater Mohawk Valley one, which was terrible. I sat on that board. That was the worst land. There was no financials. It was in bad shape. No one kept track of anything. We got off of that. Herkimer County just formed their own. But you can do a lot of those same processes through 19A and B, through foreclosure, eminent domain. You know, it depends on safety and what you're trying to do.
But 19A and 19B is the local municipality, it's not necessarily the
The IDA wouldn't do it. We just support it because if you're a local municipality and you take over this school, what, you don't want it. You have no means to do anything with it.
And then is it transferred?
Yeah, so the deed gets transferred first to them for 120 days, then transferred to my LDC. You have an LDC too, right? So for liability purposes, you never want, the IDA wouldn't take it, the LDC. So did you ever hear of Charlestown Mall out in Utica? Remember that big mall that was before that? So we're taking that property over. It used to be Savage Arms. It's contaminated. We're most likely gonna put some green energy on that. But it was very contaminated. EPA came in, there's a $14 million lien on it. We convinced them to waive the lien. It's like a big grant. And we're gonna work with that. But once again, you gotta have the right attorneys for that liability. And that'll never go to the IDA. That's gonna go to the LDC, then an LLC.
And we do have these.
Yeah, but your LLC you'll form for probably each project. You never really combine the two because the liability will float with them all. But I'm not an attorney, so please talk to your attorney. We always have our attorneys at our meetings, by the way, too.
You do.
Yeah, so we have our local attorney, then our Hodgkin Russ zooms in, unless we need him for something big.
And how active do you get in housing projects?
So housing is relatively new to us. We did bond for $10 million with one of our elderly Section 8 type projects in Herkimer, the village of Herkimer, and we gave them a pilot on that. But other ones we haven't done as much with. We'll do more like this coming up. We have another project in Ilion, not far from Remington Arms, called the Dual Fold. There'll be some housing in that. There, we went to the communities and we got a 10-year no property tax pilot. We went to the school district. We didn't have to get their vote in, but we told them what we were doing because that property's been abandoned for 20 years, never collected a dime. So we went to the school district, told them all, and it was all voted on unanimously too. The village, the town, the school, and the county. We need to sell this property and get it back on the roll.
So, I just want to summarize what I'm hearing so far and make sure that I'm getting this correctly. So it sounds like you have townships that are willing to work with you and do things like waive taxes for a temporary period of time and things of that.
Well, they don't have to do that because the pilot, we have the right as the IDA, we're the only jurisdiction that can put pilots into place for the projects that we do. The cities are the only ones that can do pilots on Section 8 housing projects.
And then getting financial support from entities. When you talk about,
Only the county we're getting financial support.
okay, so when it comes to putting in infrastructure, you talked about putting in line, because that's our biggest problem around here. The infrastructure is on Route 12 and it's nowhere else.
Yeah.
Who's paying for that infrastructure? Are you guys paying for it, or is there an investment?
Once again, the county is paying for it, but we pay them back through the PIF. So they're betting on development in this park, and we've proven the development that we've done, so we haven't had an issue. So I'll give you another example. Down in Manheim, Dolgeville, small community, we have a 30-acre park down there that was bought 40 years ago, hasn't collected a dime. Very good football team. That town needed an additional water source because their wells are about 4 miles away, one line coming in and out. We went and got them a grant that's covering probably 80% of it through EFC and a WIA grant to put up this water tank, 500,000 gallon water tank. Not only is it going to help the community up on that hill, it'll help our park with fire suppression and pressure and water, but it gives them, it's not a source, but it's a backup source per se, because you got 500,000 gallons in there. We needed that additional money, the PIF, so we went to the school district, the town, the village, and the county, got the additional money that we needed. I think it's like 800,000 more, and we will pay that back as we bring a development into the park.
So I'm going to give you an example, John. You help me think about this one. There's a building in, very really, you'll go right by it. 12. There's a cotton mill building on the left-hand side in Sherbrooke. Historic building.
I saw it this morning.
Okay. Historic building. It's for sale. Now, he probably wants too much for it, but he wants a fair amount of money for that. And it's 10 miles from Colgate, it's 10 miles from Giovanni, it's 10 miles from Norwich. Everybody needs housing in all three of those locations, right? Really cool housing, not market price, or whatever, house, whatever, they're not, doesn't have to be low income housing, right? I can't seem to figure out a way to get that piece of property.
Is it contaminated?
No.
It's not a brownfield site.
No.
So that takes away those tax credits. That's a bad thing, by the way. way.
That's about.
Multiple unit housing, you can build on contaminated sites. Single family homes, you can't. Multiple, you can. Is it historic?
Yep.
So they can go for historic tax credits, which bring them in more money too. So now you need to work with a developer. So you need to come to my summit and meet some developers.
I'm going to, that's a problem. So my question would be, let's assume I've met those developers. Do we then say, as an entity, we put the pilots in place for this building and say, if you bought this building here, or does the IDA acquire the building and then do that?
I would, if I don't have to acquire it, I'd rather not. So if you work with the right developer, but you're gonna have to convince them why to come here. So in the meeting, when you bring the developer here, HR from Chobani better be here. Someone from that college better be there. You better be at every meeting, because you're the chairman of the legislature, the town board. You need to be at these meetings and say, we're behind this 100%. What do we do to get you here? And they'll come back to you, and you don't have to give them everything too sometimes. The pilots you'll look at too. But if you want to start, you need a catalyst, like you said earlier. What's going to be your catalyst for redevelopment of these buildings? That could be it. So sometimes you take a little bit more on. So it's hard to say this in this group here, but I learned this a long time ago too. As an IDA, you're here to bring in jobs, business, development. You understand the towns are here to collect taxes, so it reduces the burden on their community. An IDA is to bring in businesses, development. The communities are here for the taxes. So you kind of have to separate yourself in the beginning, but you got to look at the long game. In 10 years, you're collecting more. That building should be assessed for more. You're going to see more revenues from sales tax now, because those people have to buy things in your community. You got a Grand Union right here. I mean, those are the things that we look at. It's very difficult to separate, and especially when you're on the town board and boy, I'm gonna take this big community's coming in here, I'm gonna take a hit for a little while, and people are gonna ask why. Well, you're gonna see the benefit of all this new revenue coming in. We put that gas station in that park in Frankfurt, the town of Frankfurt, where Tractor Klein moved into. And it brings in about $130,000 a month in sales tax. I know, because the guys call me up bitching every month on how much they're paying in sales. So it depends on the product and what it is. The old school, nobody was gonna take over. We needed to make that happen. He couldn't go through the process of doing 19B and all of that.
Yeah, that's why, so when I think about Brian, close to home, you got that school building that's on South Broad and BBF. It's been empty for 20 years. It's literally been empty for 25 years. The developer owns it, started the project, can't get enough in it because of the parking requirements, whatever the rules are, Eric, but it sits there empty as you enter our community forever. How do we address that?
Well, you gotta work with the towns on the zoning, the master plan's gotta call some things out. You guys have a long-term plan, but each community should start working. There's grants available, CDBG grants out there for master plans. You go into the community and you say, yes, we need so much housing, we need so much car space here.
John, when you were talking about, say for instance, that school, the building in Sherburne that Sal was talking about, you have that meeting, and it was a hypothetical meeting with that developer. As an IDA rep, is your only bargaining chip, for lack of a better way to put it, is your only bargaining chip that pilot, or are you bringing other assets to that project, whether it be, I'm just making up infrastructure meetings that may be part of.
Well, those can be addressed too, and we can help with those through grants too as well. You really need to know what the property is. We have spec sheets. You go on our website, you'll see a lot of those. We just took over an old Masonic temple in the middle of Herkimer. And if you go on our website, you can see it before it was clean. We did 3D tour, and after it's all cleaned out. Now we're gonna develop.
You took it over from who?
It went into foreclosure. So we made the county take it for us. And then they turned it over to us, and we put it in our LDC.
But I guess